Welcome to Your Strata Property, the podcast for property owners looking for reliable, accurate, and bite-sized information from an experienced and authoritative source.
Hello and welcome. I'm Amanda Farmer, and this is episode 300 of the Your Strata Property podcast. This podcast started way back in 2016, 6 years ago now. I thought I'd record 3 episodes of the podcast, dabble a little in this world of podcasting, see how those episodes landed. Turns out they landed pretty well, and I recorded a few more. We've averaged about 1 episode a week for the last 6 years, leading us to 300 podcast episodes. Thank you for the opportunity to do something I have absolutely loved to do over the last 6 years. Thank you for telling me just how much you've enjoyed the podcast, reaching out to me in my inbox each week, letting me know how much the episodes help you. The information that is delivered is interesting, surprising, helping you solve problems in your home, your investment, and the homes of those clients that you're serving. It is those messages of support and those stories of success that have inspired and continue to energize me and are the reason I have recorded 300 episodes of this podcast. Today, of course, I have a really special episode for you. It's episode 300, but more than just that, I have invited some members of the Your Strata Property online community to share with us which episodes of the podcast over the last 6 years, which of these 300 they have enjoyed the most. Or if that's a little hard to choose, simply what it is about the podcast that they love. And I'm thrilled to say that today you'll hear from 7 marvelous members of our online community. Some are strata managers, some are owners, some are committee members, all sharing what they love and what they've learned from the podcast and directing us to some specific episodes that they suggest we head back and check out. I'm going to share a snippet of audio from each of these members, and after each snippet, I'll be back here with you. Rest assured that where our members are referring to particular episode numbers, I do have the link to that episode for you in the show notes, so you can head over and check it out. Our show notes are under each podcast episode over at yourstrataproperty.com.au/podcasts. Just look for episode 300 and you will see the notes and the links there under the show. Let's dive in. Here is the first suggestion from one of our members.
Hi, I'm Tim Sarah from Strata Choice, a long-time listener of the Your Strata Property podcast and member of the Your Strata Property online forum. I've learned so much from the podcast, but one of my favourites was episode 89 on how to effectively chair a strata meeting. Strata meetings are so important, and running them properly is even more important. Thank you so much, Amanda, and happy 300th podcast episode.
Thank you, Tim Sarah. Episode 89. I'm not surprised that Tim has chosen this episode, How to Effectively Chair a Strata Meeting. In that episode, I shared some actionable tips for effectively chairing meetings drawn from my own experience attending difficult meetings as a strata lawyer. It's generally not the straightforward, peaceful, agreeable meetings that I am invited to attend. In that episode, I cover how to start the meeting, how to put motions, declare results, and deal with would-be troublemakers. As a very experienced, successful manager, I'm so pleased to hear that that episode has helped Tim. You've heard there Tim refer to the member forum. That's our Q&A forum for members of our online community. Tim didn't say, but I know he doesn't mind me outing him. He is also one of our experts inside our member forum, in there with me answering questions most days from owners, managers, our wide range of members. And his guidance is always spot on, always solid, and I really appreciate having the support of a professional like Tim in our member forum. So thank you, Tim. Thank you for sharing your favourite episode with us on this special occasion. Next up, I'm taking you over to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I know, is an owner in a number of strata buildings. And here's what Elizabeth has to share.
Hi to Amanda and all the wonderful folk at your Strata Property. What a steep learning curve strata is. I've learnt a few things, but one really main thing is you have to know the Act and how to interpret the Strata Schemes Management Act. If I'd known that at the beginning of my strata journey, I would have saved myself time, energy, and money. First thing I do if there's an issue now, I turn straight to the section of the Act. You're either in breach of the section or you're not in breach of the section. Furthermore, the Act is not that difficult to understand, even for a layperson. So thanks your Strata Property team for pointing me in the right direction on my ever ongoing strata journey. All the best. Bye.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I love that you have shared this incredibly important tip. It's often something I say to clients of my legal practice when I meet them for the first time. You are fast going to become an expert in the Strata Schemes Management Act, I say to them. And I know I have seen Elizabeth over her time in our community evolving into that expert role. And she's right. It is not that difficult for a layperson, that is, someone who's not an expert, a lawyer, a strata lawyer, to understand our strata legislation, whether you're in New South Wales or in other states. Sometimes it's just a matter of knowing where to look, which section to refer to find the answer to your problem or the remedy for your complaint. And I'm always happy to point our owners, our committee members, our managers in the right direction. Thank you for your contribution, Elizabeth. We'll head over to our next member right now.
Hello, I'm Patricia Farmelo from Metro Strata Managers, situated on the Northern Beaches in Sydney. One thing I have learned from the podcast is how to deal with difficult committee members. Episode 130, recorded back in 2018, identified gaslighting and provided the strategies to set boundaries, take control, and to become a more effective strata manager to empower others to have their say.
Yes, episode 130. Thank you, Patricia, for highlighting this one. That week I had a chat to Natalie Fitzgerald, strata manager, about the difficulties faced by some owners when it comes to having their view heard above the loud voices that may prevail in their building or on their strata committee. Natalie and I shared our tips for owners feeling overwhelmed by what is supposed to be a democratic process, and we talked about how the loudest voice might not always be the right voice. And I love that Patricia has pointed out here the term gaslighting. If you haven't come across this one before, to gaslight means to undermine another person's reality by denying facts, denying that what they're seeing, what they're experiencing is actually real, or denying the feelings that they're feeling. Victims of gaslighting can be manipulated into turning against their own beliefs, their own feelings, their own thoughts and emotions, and ultimately can make them question who they are fundamentally as people. In episode 130, Natalie and I talked about how we see that practice, sadly, sometimes within dysfunctional strata communities, and work through those strategies for how we might prevent that kind of behaviour and how owners suffering may assert themselves in the face of what is really unacceptable bullying. So I love hearing from Patricia, who is a strata manager, that she too has learned so much from that episode. Thank you, Patricia, for sharing and for your constant support of the podcast and our online community. We'll head over now to Margaret.
Hi, I'm Margaret, an owner in a large strata scheme in Sydney. The best thing I've learned from Amanda's podcast came from podcast 282. In that episode, Amanda went through the 4 steps for a successful inspection of strata books and records. In particular, Amanda stressed again, as she has done in other podcasts, that owners are entitled to see and have copies of the strata roll. This was so helpful because this is an area where strata secretaries and strata managers are not always cooperative.
Thank you, Margaret. I am so happy that you've raised the issue of records and records inspections, an issue so close to my heart, as many of you loyal listeners will know. Episode number 282. I shared my 4 steps to a successful Strata records inspection, including what you might do when particular records are withheld for privacy reasons or legal reasons, or at least that's what the secretary or the Strata manager, the holder of the books and records, is telling you. This is really an area where I feel just a little bit of knowledge about our legislation, a little bit of knowledge about procedure, and a helping hand to make the right approach has really assisted owners to access information, records that they are legally entitled to and otherwise wouldn't be able to access or would have great difficulty accessing. So thank you, Margaret, for bringing that one to episode 300. And here comes our next member.
Hi, Amanda. It's Bruce from Piermont. I look forward to the Your Strata Property podcast each week and usually listen while going for a walk. I also try to take in Friday Live, quite often listening to the recording after the event on Facebook or LinkedIn. There's so much to learn in Strata, and many Strata committee members may not realise that their knowledge of corporate law and boardroom practices is great, but Strata law is often different. You and your guests often look ahead. The subject could be electric vehicle charging or solar power, but it might also be whether privacy principles are really relevant in accessing the information to resolve an issue. Congratulations on reaching podcast episode 300.
Bruce, it is such a treat to have a contribution here from you today. Thank you. I know you have been a long-time listener and a big supporter of Your Strata Property, of the podcast in all of its forms, often there on our Friday Live, as you said. I do find myself saying hi to Bruce from Piermont, if that's where you happen to be, on any given Friday. Speaking of Friday Live, the 3 Seans also come to mind, all spelled the right way, of course. Special shout out to the 3 Seans. And Bruce, it is so true that knowledge and experience of corporate law and boardroom practice does not necessarily equal knowledge of strata law. I really do love working with those experienced committee members who know how to run a tight board meeting but are eager to learn how to bring those skills to the committee meeting or the general meeting. So thank you for highlighting that one, and thank you for all that you do, serving your community and contributing to our online community. Thank you, Bruce. I look forward to seeing you on a Friday Live sometime soon. Over now to our next member.
Hello, this is Bernadette Jansen from She Renovates. One thing I've learnt from the Your Strata Property podcast was in episode 208, where Amanda interviewed Rob Broadhurst, and they talked about the new accreditation and register of fire safety experts. They also talked about the changes in the fire safety rules for short-term rental properties. And this information is not only useful for me personally in my properties, but also for my community of renovators. So thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Bernadette. Your contribution just shows how broad our audience is here on the podcast. I'm often referring to owners, managers, committees, but we have people like Bernadette who are experts in their own field. Bernadette helps women who want to create an income and a life they love through renovating and property investment. And I know she gets so much from the podcast that helps her help others when they're buying and renovating strata properties. And episode 208 with Rob Broadhead of 2020 Fire, that was a great one. I also had a chat with Rob earlier, episode 178. We talked about how to find a competent fire safety professional. But in episode 208, Rob gave us an update on the accreditation scheme that was at that time almost in place for our fire safety practitioners. Now it is indeed in place. Lots changing there in our fire safety space. To quote Rob, his industry has moved from a ragtag bunch of tradies to accredited professionals. And when we're talking about fire safety, that is indeed a welcome change. So episode 208 and 178, definitely great ones to tune into if you need some guidance on that topic in particular. Thank you, Bernadette, for reminding us of that one. Something Bernadette didn't mention there was her own interview here on the podcast. She has been one of our special guest experts, episode 229. Bernadette covered, together with David Jansen, the do's and don'ts of apartment renovation. Bernadette and David demystified some common apartment reno questions, including the question of whether renovators really do need council approval for the removal of internal walls, and whether a washing machine installed in a kitchen needs waterproofing. Great one to check out if you are renovating an apartment or guiding anyone who may be doing so. Thank you, Bernadette, for your own expert contribution to the podcast. Heading over now to our last, but certainly not least, member contribution. I won't reveal who it is. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, this is Sean O'Day from GK Strata. One thing I have learned from the podcast is that it is vital for those working in Strata to keep up to date. The podcasts have been a valuable resource in providing materials and references to assist me in providing accurate and current information to all of my clients. And this in turn has benefited all of the plans that I work with.
Thank you, Sean. I love this summary of all things valuable about the podcast. This is really something I have to say I didn't appreciate when I first started out, the pay it forward effect. Strata managers tuning in, gaining knowledge, improving their skills, and then passing on that knowledge and sharing those skills with their clients, the many buildings they have under management, the Strata committee members they're working with every day. It really does warm my heart to think about our professional managers out there helping to improve communities through education. So thank you, Sean. Keep up the good work. I have many committee members reach out to me online or may come across me in person from time to time who let me know that they had the podcast recommended to them by their Strata manager. I appreciate those recommendations and do believe that it makes everybody's lives and our Strata managers' jobs much easier when Strata owners understand the complexities of the legal environment we're all working in and know where to go to have their questions answered. Now, there are so many people I would have loved to feature in this special episode number 300. And as I've said, so many of you reaching out to me each week in my inbox, letting me know how you enjoy the podcast. I have thought of a way that I can give you each a shout out here on the show. If you love the podcast and you'd like to make sure others just like you can benefit from it too, I invite you to leave a rating or review in the place where you listen to the podcast if it's not direct from the website. For example, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts and you're listening through the app on your phone, as I know so many of you do, there is a way for you to rate the podcast up to 5 stars and leave a short written review for anyone who does so, sharing what they love about the show or a particular episode that has helped them in their community. I'll give you a shout out here in a future episode of the show. Now, I have to say the Apple Podcast app itself is not all that intuitive when it comes to leaving reviews. There's a few steps in the process. Open up the app, search for or find in your library the Your Strata Property podcast. When you've clicked on the show as a whole rather than a particular episode, you can scroll all the way down to a section at the bottom of the list called Ratings and Reviews. And then you can give a star rating or click to write a review. Now, I know on these platforms not everybody uses their full name, so I'd love for you to email me to let me know if you've left a review so that I can give you a special shout out here on the show. Send me a copy of your review or let me know that you have left it by emailing amanda@yourstrataproperty.com.au. Now, you can let me know in your review how the podcast has helped you, or if there's a particular episode that stands out to you, which one it was, and why you enjoyed it so much. Each review and 5-star rating that you give does help us reach more owners, committee members, managers, those needing exactly the type of demystifying that goes on here on the podcast. Thank you for the honour and the privilege of delivering 300 podcast episodes for you over the past 6 years. I can tell you, I am not planning on going anywhere anytime soon. Enjoy your weekend, Strata, and I'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to Your Strata Property, the podcast which consistently delivers to property owners reliable and accurate information about their strata property. You can access all the information below this episode via the show notes at www.yourstrataproperty.com.au. You can also ask questions in the comments section, which Amanda will answer in her upcoming episodes. How can Amanda help you today?